Hey everybody, what's up? Back here with Heartless Chat today. Today I got another treat for you. We got a guest that runs his other podcast. He also is an entrepreneur, and today we're going to talk to you a little about the struggles in relationships and another little segment on mental health. So thank you for tuning in again. If you like what you see, please hit that bell on the bottom, like and subscribe. Let's go. Let's have some fun.
I know the ops, man, I'm getting money and I'm flexing.
All right, so our guest here today, Nathaniel Hartley. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, man, so earlier you were telling me that you had your own podcast going. Tell the viewers a little bit about it. What are your main themes on your podcast?
So on my podcast, I normally focus on self-improvement, growth in unique different areas, such as sports rehabilitation or, you know, general self-improvement, such as mental health improvement, physical health improvement, social improvement. Everyone everywhere has areas to grow, so it's always important to keep that in mind. And we sort of dabble into unique different areas.
I see you with the podcast, but you also told me that you had some projects on the side. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I got a couple different hustles. I like to, for me personally, I'm a very technologically frisky sort of guy. I like to dabble into unique fields of research such as prosthetics, biology, mechanics, electronics. I like the newest, coolest technology. For myself, some of the entrepreneurship roles or businesses that he sort of touched base on were a millwright business that I wanted to tap into, entrepreneurial administration, and yeah, that's about it.
You're definitely a student of the world. You're always reaching and finding things to learn and grow. So it's admirable. So we're gonna jump into a little bit of like relationship questions. Heartless Chat is themed around love, relationships, single life, being like brand new relationships, lengthening relationships. But we're gonna talk about a little bit of hardships in relationships today.
Hit me. Let's see what you got.
So emotions have a huge role to play in every single relationship, from friendships to relationships with either your partner, your parents, your coworkers, your superiors, subordinates. How you feel directly affects everybody around you, and sometimes even being silent with a certain energy can just be an energy drain to those around you, right? How do you find emotions in relationships affects your friendships?
Sometimes you'll be strained in a love relationship. When you love somebody deeply, there's stresses and strains in that relationship that you can't identify because there's no words for it. And when you start and you need outlets, you need friends sometimes to lean on to vent, to express how you're feeling. And it can be difficult sometimes, but it's necessary to, one, keep your sanity, and two, to connect, to stay and keep those relationships healthy. Because if you invest too much, too soon, the house of cards can crumble.
I understand that. So, like, when a girl starts dating you, she starts dating you because she admires the person who you were. But I find in a lot of relationships, there's those people who tend to stick to each other too much, right? And they suppress who the other person is. So, over time, they're not dating the person that they fell in love with originally. They're controlling this person so much that they're just now just a shell, or just a piece of who they once were. I find with friendships too, right? Like, when you have time with your friends and you can go out and experience those other parts in your life, and in the relationships of friendships, right? You become a lighter version of yourself to bring back home. I find like, especially like when you're spending too much time with a person, it just toxic behaviors can develop, right?
Agreed. Agreed. Sometimes when you spend too much time, you invest too much into someone, there's no reciprocation. There's no back and forth. Friendships should not be, there should never be an expectation placed on love or friendships or relationships. And I think that sometimes people do have an expectation. They inherently do because let's say you were treated a specific way from a specific person in the past, and then you're in a new relationship and you with someone new who has different morals, unique ideas, a different way of approaching things, a completely different type of person, and you fall in love with someone for this person because you've been with this, you don't like the way that they control you or the way that they fucking sorry or the way that they sort of possess you, right? Sometimes it's too much, right? There's a limit that has to be placed on how much you're willing to take from that person before, you know what, you've had enough.
So with this, how do you find life at home changes under stress?
Work, money, friendships, everything is a stressor in today's world. Everything can be a challenge for growth or for recovery. And sometimes that stress is hard to keep out of the household. Sometimes, let's say you have a cat or a dog at home, and that cat or dog doesn't want anything else but your attention and your love and your affection, and they're an animal. They're not a human. But sometimes it's hard to separate the pain or the stress that you feel at work from the relationship that you have with the animal or the other person that's waiting for you at home. It can be hard to differentiate, to come home after a long day, to turn it off, to flip it off. So it follows you around. Sometimes that's not always the answer.
They say try not to bring work home, right? And it's not as easy as it said. Nothing is easy as ever as easy as said. So I mean, there'll be days where I come home to the lady and like where you really have to turn it off and you really got to try to flip that switch, like you said, right? And just bury what happened at work. But there's those other days where you just it's good to rant, right? There's got to be a balance. There's got to be days where your partner is there to listen to you and be able to absorb some of your stress to like have be there so you can pour a little bit of your cup into theirs, right? Or them to pour their cup into yours, right? So there's balance, right? So there's some days you can't come home and just every day is a stressful day at work, so you come home and unload it off at home.
Everyone has outlets to de stress, and it's on us to figure out how to properly manage that stress.
Whether it be through friends, time with your friends, or time at the gym, physical activity. Um, do you think people perceive you differently under different emotional circumstances?
100%. 100%. One of my toxic traits as an individual is I like to bury a lot of my pains and my problems and my fears. And the reason I do that is because I'm scared what people are going to think. Scared of the way that people are going to respond to a negative outlook, a narcissistic environment. Some people are intimidated, some people get scared, some people run away from a narcissistic environment. It's not about being narcissistic, it's not about being happy all the time. It's about finding the right environment to properly express yourself. And other people's perception of your emotional states change. Some days they see you as a happy individual. Some days they see you in the worst of times, at their lowest points. It matters the strength of the other person. That is where a bond forms when you know that you can express those deepest pains, those deepest fears. That's what matters to a person, is when you can actually express those emotions truly, honestly, in a relationship.
I don't really think you should be really. Well, I mean, there's a time and place for everything. And sometimes you have to bury some things. There's a time and place to bury, but if you start burying too much, it's going to start poking up out of the dirt. And I used to listen to talks. I've listened to a couple different psychologists talk on narcissism, right? And like Jordan Peterson, a couple other psychologists talk about narcissism. But I find that narcissism is such a vague word used to insult somebody now, right? Like if just because you don't like a certain behavior and they think that you're it's about them, right? And it's about them at that moment. That's pretty narcissistic, right? But like, where's the line where you think it's like that's narcissistic or that person is searching for help, right? Like, I mean, narcissism where like there's a point of narcissism where you're just like, oh, look at me, like I'm absolutely ripped and I've got my shirt off all the time, or I'm just or I'm a victim, I'm a victim, look at me, right? Because there's different types of narcissism.
Agreed. Agreed. And it all depends on the context that you place around the word. It all depends on how you truly feel when you use a word that's heavy like that. Some people, when they hear the word, they go, ugh. Sometimes there's a negative context that surrounds a word like that. For me personally, the word doesn't necessarily mean negative, it means realistic. Narcissistic means that you recognize and you realize that the world isn't always sunshines, daffodils, and daisies. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you gotta put your head down. You gotta go through that wall. Right? It's not always. It's not always gonna be good, and That's where there's a line that exists between narcissism and reality.
There are those times where you're going to have to put yourself first before others, right? I used to have my mother tell me, you got to take care of yourself, my boy, before you start taking care of other people. But like, there we go again, balance. Everything's got to be taken into moderation. You got to take care of yourself before you take care of other people, but you can't always be focused on yourself. And I find there's a lot of relationships in this world today where the relationship is, well, what can I get out of this person for me, and not what can I do for this person.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%.
So going on to the next question, Nate, do you find yourself turning inward when it comes to stress?
Yes, I do. I always, again, it's hard to stay positive sometimes, and it's hard to keep out negative thoughts as well. Under times of great stress, under times of great stress, yes, you have to lean on people, but you gotta suck it up and go through it yourself. And that's the reality of the situation. Right? It's not always it's not always the answer to talk to someone else. It's not always the answer to seek assistance. Sometimes you just gotta suck it up and push through it. It's not always gonna be easy.
In great words of Ronnie Coleman, everybody got their own problems. They ain't trying to hear yours.
Amen to Ronnie Coleman.
But the true ones always are there, right? Like I find like I have friends that go through it, right? And I want to be there for my friends. But I also want to be little spoons sometimes too. Like I want to be held sometimes, and I find that there's those people in my life that are my support circles, but you can't remember the ones that support you because it needs to be reciprocated as well.
It does. It does. Sometimes you'll have that outlet of reciprocation. Sometimes someone will be there to reciprocate that love, that friendship, that time. Sometimes you don't need someone standing there beside you to hold your hand. Sometimes you don't even need a phone call. You just need someone to recognize that they're going through it. They're going through it.
So when it comes to that, with that, You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Where do you find the limit is to that? When does it go too far?
It goes too far when the only time you're getting a call from them is when they need something. The only time you get a text from them is when they need something. That's when it's become too far. That's when the only one that's working in the relationship, the only one whose resources are being poured into maintaining a friendship is from yourself or from the other node, your node, your node in your web. When all the other nodes start depending on you to do stuff for them, that's when it becomes too much. When you can't handle that stress anymore and something's got to go.
I had my coworker today, and I had this conversation with him, and I said, bro, like I find I'm there to help a lot of people, and I think I'm getting a little bit salty because with those people that know I'd be there to help them, I'm not getting a lot of support back. And he said, Will, he said, your time is precious. Every time you give another person a little bit of your time, you're essentially giving them another piece of you. How many pieces of you are you willing to give away before you break? There's times where you put too much on the scale, and it's gonna break.
100%. 100%. Sometimes the network isn't there, and you'll have those highs and you'll have those lows, but in those highs, everyone's your friend, and in those lows, who's there? That's when you'll find trust. That's when you'll find true friends. It's during those low spots.
Thank you to my real ones out there who've been there from my lows. You know when they are, and you know who you are. So I love you.
And for me, you guys know who you are.
Do you find a lot of modern relationships are one-sided?
Sometimes there is a dependency that forms in a relationship, and it becomes lopsided. One person starts giving a little bit more time, a little bit more love, starts cooking more, starts cleaning more, starts paying for the subscriptions, something like that. Sometimes that's the way it is, right? And sometimes that's fair. Sometimes it needs to happen. Sometimes there needs to be an imbalance. Nothing's always balanced, but it's how you fight towards rebalancing the scales in a relationship. And in modern society, from what I understand, from what I see, is there are conditions placed on certain relationships. He has money, he has status, she has looks, they have the body, whatever. That dysmorphia in a relationship, that unbalancing, causes problems. And those problems can root deep, manifest, grow into something else. And that's something we have to be careful about. That's something we have to be cautious for.
I think boundaries and expectations are healthy. Boundaries and expectations among everyone are healthy. But I think this may be a little bit biased, but I think with what I see in modern society, is that men are supposed to be the unconditional lovers. They're supposed to love the woman no matter how heavy they get, no matter which way they look, no matter what they do, no matter who they go to the club with, no matter who they hang around, no matter what they do, we're supposed to love them. But when it comes to the flip side, the woman asks, you paying for this? Are you doing this? Are you paying all the bills? Like, are you like, there's so many expectations out of men, and a lot of them are financial, right? Where the man is supposed to love the woman unconditionally, but there's so many there's so many factors of what are expected out of men, out of modern men in society, right? Like, but it goes back to ancient times too. Like the men were expected to defend the camp and provide for their family, right? And that's always been an expectation. And women's expectations were to bear children and to maintain the household, right? But like with modern society now it's bigoted if you expect the woman to take care of the household.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows if they're one, have the skills, the capacity, or the competency to do so. Sometimes it falls on the man's shoulders, sometimes it falls on the lady's shoulders, or in between nowadays. Um, sorry.
Do you think, because a lot of relationships out there, people don't even bother, right? Because they've have the fear of rejection and the fear of being burned, so they don't even bother. But what do you think would happen if people just tossed those feelings off to the side, right? What if there was no more fear of rejection? Honestly, I think rejection is good because you can learn a lot from being told no, right? You get to learn how to change your strategy, you get to learn how to be different. Not you don't have to change the person you are, but maybe it's just not the person for you. But what do you think would happen if we remove the fear of rejection out of relationships?
I think there's a point to be made in changing your perception from a fear of rejection to the prospect of compromise. Sometimes sometimes it's worth looking to give in A so that you can grow in B. Sometimes it's not always about sacrificing part of yourself in pursuit of ambition, love, business. Sometimes you don't want to always sacrifice. It's not about sacrificing, it's about compromising for who you love, for those relationships, those friendships that matter to you. You got to find room and space to allow them in. You got to push this off to the side so that they can come in closer. Or you got to change how you do this so that they can come a little bit closer. Sometimes you need to put space. Use it as your friend, not as your enemy. Compromise is how you succeed. Carry on.
So, in a relationship, you have multiple different types of relationships in this world, right? You have the relationship you have with your boss, you have the relationship you have with your lover, you have the relationship you have with your friends, and all the other relationships that you have out there. So we have romantic relationships, friendship relationships, familial relationships, self love, altruistic love, infatuation, obsessive, practical, spiritual, and pet animal love. What type of love do you personally give to your partner versus your friends?
The foundations of the relationship, the time that you've invested into a friendship or relationship gives you space and room for growth and compromise. And when you're comparing a lover or the type of love that you give to a brother, a sister, or a lover, depends on how you want to approach the area of compromise. Sometimes sometimes it's easy to compromise for a lover. Sometimes you need space from a lover. Sometimes you need space from a brother. Sometimes you need a brother to lean on, or you need a sister to lean on, right? It's incomparable. It's incomparable. The time that you invest into friendships and relationships is incomparable and incontrastable. You have to be careful with who you spend your time with and how much time you plan to invest into that person. Because some people become leeches after enough time. Some people become vampires. And some people become something else, something more, something greater, something beautiful with you. They give you strength. They give you authority. They give you respect. Those are the people you want to keep around. Those are the people that make you more, that make you stronger, that make you smarter. Those are the people you want to spend your time around, not people that suck it out of you.
Sometimes I want to be around that girl that just wants to stuck it out of you, you know?
Yeah, don't we all? Anyways.
What type of love do you figure that you need the most?
You know what there's not enough of nowadays? Pet and animal love. There's something about animals. They don't care how sad you are, how mad you are, how untrustworthy or trustworthy you are. They just wanna have fun. They just wanna love their owners. They just wanna love their masters as much as they can. And you know what? I need a bit more of that in my life. I don't know about you, but I need a little bit more. You got 2 cats, so I wish I could have more cats, but
For all those animals out there, remember to go check out your local animal shelters. Pick up a little fur friend for yourself. Don't hit up a breeder. Go check out an animal shelter because you'll find a little fur friend that just needs adoption that I'm sure that you will love. It's never nice to be alone. But with loneliness comes heartbreak. Do you have any advice on how people can get back up to their feet after a bad heartbreak?
I want to say that there's only one piece of advice that I'll give, but I'm probably going to spiel off for another 20 minutes. Anyways, the only piece of advice that I can give is everyone has a source of value. Everyone should hold themselves to a certain standard. And if someone drags you down, recognize that, separate yourself from that, and realize that you're the prize. You've always been the prize. It's not, you need to realize your true wealth in life. And sometimes some people have a hard time seeing past that when they're so blinded by love, when they're so blinded by fear of, one missing out, two moving on, right? It's scary to want to move on. There's a big world, so many other people out there, right? It's hard to move on, but recognize where your wealth comes from, recognize where your true value comes from, and maybe it'll be a little bit easier to move past the heartbreak.
Last question for today. How far are you willing to go to save that relationship?
For my love, anywhere, any place, and any time. For anyone else, only one way to find out.
Thank you for coming on our show today.
Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember, you like what you see, hit that bell on the bottom, like and subscribe. Thank you for your view today. We've got lots of interesting things coming up. Stay tuned for our Heartless Elimination. Got lots and lots of frivolous action coming for you. Stay tuned.
I know the ops, man, I'm getting money and I'm flagship.